intelligence failure. Clearly, we did not learn of this operation, or we would have stopped it if we had. But I think it's important to remember that our men and women in the intelligence business out there all over the world, 365 days a year defending and protecting us, oftentimes very successful, oftentimes in ways we can never talk about. But we clearly need to do everything we can to forestall those kinds of activities by improving our intelligence capabilities, and this offers a lot of lessons learned. At the same time, the key, though, is to go eliminate the terrorist. We may never have 100% perfection in terms of our intelligence capabilities to be able to penetrate and know about all of these kinds of operations. Timothy McVeigh, for example, in Oklahoma City. But if we go after the terrorist, if we deny them sanctuary, if we take out their bases and their locations where they operate, that's probably the most effective way to deal with this threat. But we have to recognize, no matter how good we are, no matter how aggressively we pursue this, we're likely to be subject to that, partly by the very nature of our society. We're an open society. We love it that way. That's very important to preserve that and not to let the terrorist win by turning ourselves into some kind of police state.
The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee said this was a failure of great dimension in terms of intelligence. Will George Tenet remain as director of the CIA?
I think George clearly should remain as director of the CIA. I think I've great confidence in him. I've watched him operate now and worked closely with him for the last 7 or 8 months. I think he and his people do superb work for us, and I think it'd be a tragedy if somehow we were to go back now in the search for scapegoats and say that George Tenet or any other official ought to be eliminated at this point. I don't think you can say that.
When Air Force One returned to Washington, we saw it accompanied by fighter jets. Right. General Norman Schwarzkopf, a man you know well, has suggested that perhaps in the short term at least, Air Force One should be accompanied by fighter jets while flying over the United States just as a precaution.
Perhaps. I don't know that we've made that judgment yet, that decision yet. What happened on Tuesday, of course, once we got all the aircraft grounded, that gave us a fairly high degree of confidence that we were in control. The problem was there were some 2,000 aircraft up when this operation started, and it took several hours to get them all down. And as long as there were aircraft up and there was a report of a threat against Air Force One and there were aircraft we couldn't account for that might in fact have been taken by the terrorists, flying cover for Air Force One was very important.
Would we consider using fighter jets to protect Air Force One for the short?
I think if we believe it's necessary, we absolutely will.
In Europe, the government provides security at the airports. Highly trained, well-paid specialists. Here in the United States, it's a low-paying job hired by the airlines. Would we consider having the government take over airline security, airport security?
We're clearly going to have to look at this whole question and find ways to improve and enhance our security. Without doubt, and it's going to be a prime focus for Norm Mineta and the folks over at the FAA. Exactly what the answer ought to be, Tim, I don't have enough information now to be able to judge that, but without question, this was a significant failure there in the sense that they were able to take four aircraft. But again, they didn't do it with guns or explosives, they did it with knives.
The airline industry is losing $300 million a day, several teetering on bankruptcy, or at least Chapter 11. Would you support a federal bailout of both loans and grants and assistance to the airline industry?
The President hasn't really taken a position on any particular piece of legislation. I think we're very interested in finding ways to make certain that in this particular instance there's no sort of permanent damage, if you will, to our civil aviation capacity. It's very important. We've got people, Norm Mineta is working on it, Larry Lindsay, who heads the Economic Council, is heavily engaged in it. We're working with the airlines, and I'm sure we'll come up with
something. So you're open to the concept?
Absolutely.
About a week ago, we were all discussing the so-called Social Security Trust Fund.
And who's lockbox.
And the lockbox.
Right.
And who spent the surplus. Is that debate now moot?
I think so. I certainly hope so. I think, we've all been concerned to make certain we protect Social Security. But we clearly have a situation here, and that debate was a little bit fallacious anyway, because in fact there was never any question about what the United States government was going to pay its obligations to our seniors. We've never defaulted on a debt since Alexander Hamilton was Treasury Secretary, so that's never really been an issue. But clearly at this stage we do have a surplus that's generated primarily by the payroll tax, and as has been true oftentimes in the past, that comes in. We were using it to retire debt. Clearly some of it now is going to be used to meet this emergency. urgent supplemental that Congress passed this weekend of some $40 billion, take those steps we need to take, both to recover from this attack as well as to do everything we can to prevent future ones.
The president said he would use the Social Security surplus in case of war and or recession.
Right.
Do we now have both war and recession?
Quite possibly. We clearly have a war against terrorism, and we don't know yet what the third quarter is going to be like, but if the economists come in and revise the second quarter down into negative territory in terms of gross domestic product growth, and the third quarter, third quarter of the calendar year, fourth quarter of the fiscal year.
And the economic shock from this.
If that comes in negative, then we'll have the definition to negative quarters. That would qualify as a recession.
What about the debate over missile defense? Many Democrats are saying this now proves that our focus should be on terrorism and counterterrorism and preparedness, and that the primary threat is not something the missile defense could take care of.
Well, I just fundamentally disagree. I mean, there's no question about what there's a threat on the terrorist front, and we've got to deal with that. We've been working it. We'll continue to work it. But there also, that this does not in any way diminish the threat with respect to ballistic missiles down the road. A ballistic missile equipped with a weapon of mass destruction, a nuke, for example, a nuclear weapon, would be far more devastating than what we just went through. If one of those was to hit one of our cities, or to hit a major base overseas where U.S. forces are deployed, the casualty list would be higher. The consequences would be even greater than the terrible tragedy we've just been through.
So we can afford this war on terrorism and a missile defense system?
I don't see, Tim, how anybody can argue that we cannot afford to defend America. And we're going to have to defend it against conventional threats. We're going to have to defend it against ballistic missile threats. We're going to have to defend it against the threat of terrorism. And I think for public officials to argue because we got hit with a terrorist assault, we should ignore the ballistic missile threat out there strikes me as irresponsible.
The stock market has been closed since Tuesday. It reopens tomorrow. Are you concerned?
I think that our economy is strong. I do believe the market's going to open tomorrow. That's clearly the current plan and expectation. I would hope, I'm not an investor anymore because I had to get out of the market since I'm now a public official, but I would hope the American people would, in effect, stick their thumb in the eye of the terrorist and say that they've got great confidence in the country, great confidence in our economy, and not let what's happened here in any way throw off their normal level of economic activity. We look forward to recovery later this year from the slowdown period that we've been through, and I have every confidence that that will in fact happen.
Would you ever consider undoing or holding off or triggering part of the tax cut in the future if the resources were necessary?
No, I think the tax cut's crucial. And that's exactly what we needed in terms of the slowdown. Having the tax cut out there now means we're going to have a more robust year than would have been the case without the tax cut. It's a key piece of stimulus, and I think the president did exactly the right thing.
There is such fervor, such emotion, such anger in the country right now. And as we conduct this war against terrorism, as you said, it's going to take days, months, years. What do we ask of the American people? Will they have to sacrifice in order to help win this war?
I guess I would ask vigilance. Be aware of what's going on around you. Don't operate on the assumption that somehow because we live behind two oceans, we're immune to attack. We now know we're not. I would ask, obviously, that they be understanding, if you will, of the importance of the effort that we're going to have to undertake here. We may end up, with more stringent security measures at airports and things like that. But I think there's a unity and a spirit out there that I have not seen for a long time in this country. I see it on Capitol Hill between Republicans and Democrats. I see it the workers who were cleaning up the mess in New York where the president visited yesterday. I see it in the people I've talked with, and I think we have to recognize we are the strongest, most powerful nation on earth. We've got a tremendous set of accomplishments and an enormously bright future ahead of us. There are those in the world who hate us, and they will do everything they can to impose pain, and we can't let them win.
And we'll find them.
We'll find them.
Mr. Vice President, we thank you for inviting us up to the mountains here with you, and we'll be watching you very carefully.
Thanks, Tim.
Like all of you, I've spent this week wiping my eyes and grinding my teeth and wondering why. I've drawn strength from a story about a man I knew, Father Michael Judge, the chaplain of the New York City Fire Department, a Franciscan. He raced to the World Trade Center after the explosion to comfort the injured. While administering the last rites to a dying rescue worker, he himself was killed by flying debris. New York's bravest physically carried Father Mike away. They brought his body first to the altar of St. Peter's Church, where it would be safe, then to their firehouse on 31st Street, Hook and Ladder Company number 24, directly across from the friary where he lived. They wrapped him in sheets and placed him in one of their own bunks. They asked his fellow Franciscans to cross the street and join them. Together, firemen, priests, and brothers wept and sang the prayer of St. Francis. May the Lord bless and keep you and show his face to you and have mercy on you. That is the way of New York. That is the spirit of America. From February 1945 at Iwo Jima to September 2001 at the World Trade Center.
Our crowded planet has something to say.
Can you hear me?
ADM believes that for every problem, nature has an answer. Soy. We found that countries that plant grazing land in soybeans can increase protein yields 30 times per acre. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
I like to live big. I like big surprises, big dreams.
The innovative GE Profile is big.
Big, healthy babies.
It's so big, it holds a turkey, 2 casseroles, and 3 loaves of bread.
I like to entertain, big time.
Or 288 hors d'oeuvres, or 12 perfect pies.
I love having a whole house full of people.
GE Profile, our biggest, most accurate oven ever. It cooks big inside and out.
Most of all, I like the big smiles that I get when I cook big.
Cook big with the incredible GE Profile.
Big.
Enter a new era of discovery at Bristol-Myers Squibb, where groundbreaking genetic research is underway.
Winning the Tour de France was a victory for cancer medicines. But Luke, it's just the start of incredible things to come.
At the Bristol-Myers Squibb Center for Applied Genomics, researchers strive to unlock the secrets of breast cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes to lead the way in new frontiers against disease.
Hope, triumph, and the miracle of medicine. Bristol-Myers Squibb Company.
When Tokyo Electric Power turned to GE for its advanced turbine technology, it gave Tokyo the largest, most efficient power plant of its kind in the world, which means more jobs for people back home and a better future for the people of Japan.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Our air is trying to tell us something. ADM believes that for every problem, nature has an answer. Ethanol, a cleaner burning fuel made from corn. It helps the air. It helps the farmers. And if we need more, we grow it. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
Many of our viewers have expressed a need to talk to someone about this week's tragic events. These organizations have people available to help. Additional relevant information is available at NBC4.com.
My hope for my granddaughter's future is that they will be able to take care